In the previous videos, we mentioned about the proposal defense, which is one of the assessment carried out for the postgraduate students. That will be the first assessment, typically conducted within the first to the second semester of your postgraduate studies. There are two possible outcomes of the proposal defense, either being accepted or being rejected. Your research proposal should theoretically be totally out, not meeting any of the requirements if your proposal defense is rejected. This only happens to the students who are not actually doing their research study properly. A more likely outcome it would be the proposal defense being accepted. Among the outcome of the accepted, it would be either with or without the amendment. Without the amendments, it would be the best outcome, where you do not require any amendment. That means your proposal are quite good, meeting the requirements and the standards as stipulated by the university. If any lackings are found in your proposal, normally the examiner will request for amendment. It depends on the conditions of amendment, whether they're going to be minor or major amendment. If major amendment involved, you will need to resubmit the proposal and redo the presentations. If minor amendments is involved, it is either for you to proceed with the research work or you need to resubmit the proposal for the verification purpose. Normally, this kind of outcome are determined based on the score acquired from the assessment of the examiners. This is subjected to different policy of the university. What we are showing here is an example for you to have a better pictures what you're going to encounter for the assessment. Now the next question is, how does these numbers being worked out? Again, this is an example for you to refer. What we are sharing now here is the principle behind it, something you should know about the assessment. Different universities may have different scales and standards. However, the working principles are normally similar. Usually there will be assessment rubrics transparently given to the students. You will know the assessment, you know the standards, you know what you should do for your proposal defense. It is very important for you to know the assessment rubrics for the proposal defense. For those who may not know what is rubrics, rubrics are the guided marking requirement or rating scale as constructed by the School of Postgraduate Study as an objective tool to measure the quality of your proposal. These rubrics will be used as the guide by the examiner to rate you for your thesis as well as for your proposal defense. You can consider this as a systematic rules as a means to quantify the quality of your research work. It is basically a criterion-based scoring guideline, which is used to evaluate the student's performance and is usually given in the postgraduate guideline. That means normally it is being transparent to the students, allowing students to know the relevant standards of the assessment. It systematically outlines the scope of the assessment, specify the expectations, describe the levels of quality, and also list the performance criteria. As a student, you might not be able to imagine this, but later when we look into the example, maybe you have a better pictures of it. Basically, it covers all the aspects that the examiner use to evaluate your performance as a postgraduate student based on your thesis and based on your proposal defense. You will need to train yourself to actually do some self-evaluations before you submit your thesis as well as before the proposal defense, which normally the students do not do. They are not aware of the importance of the assessment rubrics. Most likely because they don't understand the rubrics or they don't know the actual functions of the rubrics. Imagine that all the examiner, that means all three of your examiner, when you are doing the proposal defense, they are using the same form, and then to decide based on what you have presented to rate the quality of your proposal. And imagine that even though there are variations in terms of the score that you acquire from the postgraduate study during the proposal defense, the variations are normally small. That means there are some consistency in terms of the measurement. This consistency in terms of the measurement is actually controlled by this rubric, as the rubric set the standards, and normally the standards are clearly specified in the expressive way, different levels of quality and the relevant marks to be awarded in accordance to that levels of quality. That means if you know how to read the rubrics, you can actually do your own self-assessment, knowing where are the areas you should improve yourself. Then you score your proposal defense as per the higher standards as outlined by the rubrics. This is a good tool for you to ensure you score well in your proposal defense. This is not something that is unethical. This is a standard procedures. They have those rubrics normally given in the postgraduate guidelines. They don't hide it. They expect the students to look into that. They make it clear these are the expectations. These are the standards that you need to fulfill in order for you to score good in your proposal defense. But most of the students, they are not aware of that. They just do what is necessary without really check on the ultimate requirements for a good proposal defense, which supposedly being defined in the rubrics. With that said, my point here is you must check your assessment rubrics before you submit your thesis, before you submit the thesis proposal, before you attend for the presentations. Let us look at an example for the assessment rubrics. We should go through it one by one as a demonstration to you how we perceive, how we extract information from the rubrics, and how we're going to use a rubric. Of course, this rubric may vary from institutions, but the principle applies. You may analyze and diagnose your own rubrics to meet the standards by the respective university. Now we look at the first criteria. It is about the title of the research. It is clearly stated that a maximum of 5 points will be awarded for your title. The descriptions in accordance to different levels of quality are listed here. The lowest one is the most unfavorable conditions, and the highest one, it will be referring to the ultimate requirement for that particular criteria. The rating will be given in accordance to the levels of qualities. For you to read the rubrics, you will need to read every single word in the rubrics, because every single word here provide meanings to you, and you will have to interpret those words and find the differences between different levels of quality. Let us look into it one by one. No reflections of research, minimum reflections of research, moderate reflections of research, very clear reflections of the research. You see the differences, it will be from no to very clear, and the marks are awarded accordingly. That means based on the rubric here, it is possible of you to score full 5 marks for your title. It is provided that the title really very clearly reflect the research. Now the problem here is, how do you define clear reflections of the research? This one you will have to go back to the chapter that we discussed about the title, which is about the structures of the thesis under the chapters of technical writing. The meaning of clear reflections, that means it's cover the main topic, appropriate terminology, focus of study, nature of study, effective, and no redundant. You have to cover all the aspects to give a clear reflections of the research. The most ideal title it would be, without reading the content of the thesis, you will be able to guess most out of the investigation by just referring to the title. Next, we proceed with the second criteria, which is for the literature review. From here, you know that the maximum mark awarded for the literature review, it will be 20%. The rating in accordance to different levels of qualities are listed here. The maximum number is 10. That means one rating it will be equals to 2 marks. Again, for a rubric, you will need to read every single words in the statement. Find the differences between the statements. Then you will know the differences in terms of the levels of qualities. And then within each level here, there are several ratings. If the examiner finds it is on the lower side, there is chances the examiner go for the smallest number. If the examiner finds it to be on the upper side, that means there is chances for the examiner to give you the largest number within that level. If the examiner finds it is at the average, that means the middle number will be selected. This is the main reason that even though you have several examiners, the variations in terms of the assessment between different examiners will be quite small, because everything are clearly defined by different levels, and the variations it will be between the lower to the higher side. Now let us look into every single one of it. Insufficient and or unrelated literature review, verge and or unclear research framework or academic construct. That means you are talking about something which is insufficient, or it is unrelated, or it is not clear. That means it's not really helping to your entire research. Then you will be awarded with rating of 0 to 2. That means if converted to the percentage, it will be between 0 to 4%. Next, satisfactory literature review with insufficient critical analysis of related work, moderately clear research framework or academic construct. That means you have done some literature review which are deemed satisfactory but lacking of critical analysis of relevant words, and moderately clear research framework or academic construct. That means if you are doing the summary for your literature review, most likely you're going to fall somewhere here, which is not the best outcome that you can expect from your proposal defense. That's why in the chapters we mentioned about the literature review, it is not about summarizing the literature. And even if you look at that, satisfactory literature review with insufficient critical analysis, that means you must have something critical analysis. If you have no analysis, it doesn't meet the meaning of insufficient. That means most likely you're going to be fall at the lower side of this level. And then moderately clear research framework or academic conduct. That means your literature review should also reflect and be related to your research. If you do not relate to your research, because here moderately clear research framework, that means you must have. If you do not have, that means most likely it's going to fall somewhere here at the bottom side of the level. In order for you to fall in the higher side, you must fulfill all the criteria here. First, satisfactory literature review, but you do not have sufficient critical analysis, which in fact you actually do critical analysis, just that it is insufficient, and you actually do the correlation with your research framework and it is moderately clear, then you will acquire the 5 point for the rating. Next level, sufficient literature review with good critical analysis of related work, good evidence of well-organized body of knowledge, clear research framework. Now the quality of literature review improve. You have sufficient literature review, not just satisfactory. That means your coverage is broader and is sufficient. That means you are able to acquire most of the relevant literature and you did good critical analysis of the related work. That means it is not just a summary. You did some analysis and those critical analysis are good. And then you also provide good evidence of well-organized body of knowledge. That means it demonstrates that you have digested the knowledge, synthesized it, and presented in your literature review chapter. And then you have a clear research framework as reflected from your literature review. That means you do correlations with your work, find the connections between what you have reviewed, and they serve functions in your research work. If you fulfill all these 4 criteria here, 1, 2, 3, and 4 here, you're going to end up to the rating 8. If you only score 1 of the criteria here, most likely it's going to be 6. If you are somewhere in between, that means it's going to be 7. Now, the highest level of quality will give you the ultimate goal that you would like to achieve for your literature review. It is now no longer sufficient. You are looking for the comprehensive literature review. That means you consider the reader aspect. You make the readers to easily understand your literature review. You have excellent critical analysis of related work. That means you have your own ways to do it, and they are all critical, meaningful to your research study, and it is interesting to the reader. Next, very clear research framework or academic conduct. That means there is a strong correlation between your literature review and your research work. There is no redundant move. Every single part of your literature review carry functions to service your entire research. This is only when you get the highest rating of 9 to 10. Again, if you have all fulfilled, that means you get 10. If you have some not fulfilled, you get 9. I guess based on how I explain the interpretations of the rubrics, you get an idea how the rubrics is being used. The rubrics of your university might term it differently, but you can adopt the principles. To make it simple, based on the requirement as outlined here, we can actually interpret the rubrics in this manner if you put everything together. In order for you to score 9 to 10 marks, you need to have every single aspect as mentioned in the rubric to be fulfilled. If you only fulfill the basic, that means the marks will be low. If you fulfill part of it, the marks will be slightly higher. If you fulfill more of it, the marks become higher. It is only when you fulfill all, you get the highest mark. These are further descriptions based on what it is defined here. Let's say now we try to interpret the definitions of the keywords that appears in the rubric, such as what does it mean by clear? It means specific, properly shown. And what does it mean by relevant? Similar and related study, applicable theories or methods which are relevant to your research. And what does it mean by sufficient? It is thorough, not biased, and reach to the point of saturations. What does it mean by analyzed? That means there will be lateral comparisons, correlations, paraphrasing, evidence each others, and etc. Let's say now what does it mean by well organized? That means it is properly structured, in proper sequence, smooth flow, and properly arranged. And what does it mean by critical analysis? That means there will be synthesis, critical thinking, there will be inputs from you, observe or predicted key governing principles. And what does it mean by significant, impactful, meaningful, critical, key points, and comprehensive? Make complicated things easily understood and readable. All these words appear in the rubrics. You should have your interpretations in terms of the keywords as given by the rubrics. Sometimes there may be slight variations in terms of the marks given to the postgraduate students, and those differences are normally due to slight difference in terms of the interpretations in terms of the keywords by the examiner. These differences are normally quite small, marginal, and it will not affect the grade or outcome of the assessment. I would say that if the rubric is properly used and if it is properly designed, normally the assessment result will be quite standardized. This is the powerful part of the rubrics.